Hello everybody, as we all know, Chris Chan is the world's most documented person on the planet, and with that much info on a single person comes a massive, and let me tell you, oh boy is it huge iceberg. We will be talking from Chris's Fanta recycling to the dimensional merge being real. And as we all know how iceberg charts work, the deeper you go, the less known and confirmed the information is. I'll be displaying this info with Sonichu medallions, 5 meaning 100% true and confirmed, and 1 meaning it's basically a myth. Now, let's get into this. Sonichu. Sonichu is Chris's official life work, magnum opus and largest contribution to society and culture. To the uncultured, it is a poorly drawn and written comic book series about the adventures and travels that befall a fictionalized version of himself and his imaginary friends. Despite starting out as a comic about the titular character, it quickly turned into a wish fulfillment outlet for Chris and his depraved fantasies, with Sonichu being a main character in name only, playing second fiddle to Chris's primary Mary Sue self-insert. Other characters include Rose Chu and Chris's many other self-inserts. The comic began on the 24th of November 2004 and updated periodically throughout the next 15 years, with its last significant update published on the 27th of June 2019. Chris wanted the series to last anywhere between 75 and 100 issues, although he was in no hurry to accomplish such a feat. Due to multiple extended hiatuses following Chris's incest charges, it seems unlikely that Chris will ever finish the series, even if he completes his sentence. Quickville. As the name suggests, Quickville is derived from Chris's own initials and serves as much of an exercise in boosting his ego as you'd expect. While the setting was initially believed to exist to justify self-inserts present in Sonichu, it was later learned that Chris's concept of a utopia had origins with a Lego city created in his own bedroom, predating the webcomic. Additional lore provided over the years also indicated that Chris himself is not the founder of the city, but his father was, and he named it after his newborn son. Chris believes that Quickville actually exists, and for many years used this city as a way to escape from anything he does not like. Recently, Chris has used other means of coping from reality, and Quickville became part of the parallel dimension of C-197, which he also believes to actually exist. Curiously, Chris has occasionally referred to Charlottesville as Quickville. Bob and Barb Chandler. Robert Bob Franklin Chandler Jr. was the father of Christine Weston Chandler, Carol Chandler, and David Allen Chandler, the stepfather of Cole Smithy and husband of Barbara Weston Chandler. Bob became a firm favorite with trolls due to Chris's aversion towards him and for his infamous cameo when he walked in on him mass debating, where he gained his nickname. The Internet Lumberjack came from this incident when he promised to cut down the internet. Barbara Ann Chandler is the widow of Bob Chandler and the mother of Christine Weston Chandler and Cole Smithy. Though Bob remained relatively popular with trolls and Christorians alike, the same cannot be said for Barbara, who has been consistently disliked by nearly everyone but Chris and her late husband. Whereas Bob eventually recognized his shortcomings as a parent to Chris and attempted to correct them later in his life, Barbara has consistently been one of the biggest enablers of Chris's bad behavior since he was a child. On top of emotionally manipulating, threatening, and occasionally physically abusing him, Barbara has been instrumental in turning Chris into the spoiled man-child that he is today. Sagas. A saga is a story arc of events on the quick chronology, documenting Chris's actions during a specific span of time. Of these sagas, the most important and influential ones would be The Love Quest, Megan, Clyde Cash, Liquid Chris, Financial Crisis, Idea Guys, Dimensional Merge, Incest, and Jail sagas. Sonichu medallions. The Sonichu medallions were a result of Chris's infatuation with his original character Sonichu. Due to the frequency of wearing his medallion in videos, photos, and in public, it has become one of his more memorable characteristics, along with his trademark striped shirt. Although Chris's habit of wearing the medallion has fluctuated over the years, he still wears the medallion in public. He does not plan to ever retire it despite its degrading condition. Chris has produced numerous medallions of his Electric Hedgehog Pokemon characters and previously produced them in large numbers for purchases through eBay. All previous and current iterations have been made from Crayola Model Magic and acrylic paint, and the quality varies from medallion to medallion due to them being handmade from scratch. All different variations of the medallions include Rose Chu Medallion, Blake Sonichu Medallion, Jigliami Medallion, Asperchu Medallion, Snoop Dogg Medallion, Night V Medallion, Modified Medallion, Shrek Medallion, and Golden Medallion. Gino Samuel's A Comprehensive History. Chris Chan: A Comprehensive History is a documentary web series created by Gino Samuel, which began in February 2018. It is, and as the name suggests, an extensive in-depth documentary about Chris's life, similar to Sakamo's. However, while Sakamo's film is a brief summary of Chris's life, for newcomers, Gino's videos go into greater detail, with most videos being between 35 to 45 minutes in length, with a decent portion of this being tied to the playback of Chris's own audio and video. As of part 75, the documentary series is 2 days, 4 hours, 50 minutes and 10 seconds long. Sakamo's documentary, Christian Weston Chandler, is an unofficial fan-made documentary film based on Chris's life from his birth to January 2015. Directed and created by Kiwi Farms member Spy Lobster, also known as Sakamo on YouTube, it was successfully completed and released to YouTube on the 2nd of February 2015. Made as a high school project, the film takes a look at Chris's troubled life in mostly serious and factual fashion, utilizing photos, videos, and interviews, although it does have its moment of comedy. Notably, the film presents no bias towards Chris as a whole. At the end, it leaves it up to the viewer to decide how they feel about Chris. 14 Branchland Court. 14 Branchland Court, Ruckersville, Virginia, also known as Sonichu Headquarters, Temple of Quick Sonichu, or the last bastion of autism. This was the vile lair of Christian Weston Chandler up until his arrest in 2021. Currently, it is inhabited by Chris's mother Barbara, the surviving Chandler cats, and Chris's dog Clover. The Classic. The Classic is a red and blue rugby shirt formerly worn by Chris from sometime before the 2nd of February 2004 to when he became a Tom Girl in 2011. It was initially thought to be lost in the 2014 house fire, but had survived at the bottom of a soaked and grimy garbage bag full of clothing. Prompted by the financial crisis, Chris went searching for it in April 2017, hoping to sell it to a fan, although no such sale come to pass. As of August 2018, the original shirt is lost, and as of October 2019, Chris owns a Mark II Classic, almost the same as the original, but sporting orange and blue instead of the original red and blue. Most documented person in history. It is often said that Chris Chan is the world's most documented person in history for very obvious reasons, from the fact that he himself from a young age started uploading content regarding his day-to-day life, to the fact that there is an entire wiki dedicated to him with a timeline of what he did in the past and hundreds upon thousands of pages documenting what he does on a day-to-day basis. It wouldn't be too crazy of a statement to say that he indeed is the most documented person in history. Chris identifies as transgender lesbian. In 2011, when Chris was 29 years old, he began exploring male-to-female gender transitioning. Starting with cross-dressing, he would gradually try do-it-yourself methods to undergo physical transitioning, which were pointless at best and dangerous at worst. In 2016, he began using legitimate means, such as seeing a professional specializing in gender issues and going on prescription hormone therapy later that year. Chris's identity gradually shifted over the course of his transitioning. He began as a transvestite, a male who cross-dresses yet still identifies as a man, or as Chris calls it, Tom Girl. In 2014, he came out as a lesbian-identified male, and by the end of that year, he began identifying as a woman, calling himself a trans woman. In 2015, he started going by Christine, making the name change official the following year, and as well as changing the gender marker on his driver's license to female. Watch and Win Sweepstakes. The Sonic the Hedgehog Watch and Win Sweepstakes was a contest held in 1993 to promote the first Sonic the Hedgehog cartoon, The Syndicated Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog. The contest's grand prize, a $1,000 KB toy shopping spree, was awarded to at least 2 lucky winners, one of whom happened to be Chris. The other winner of the contest was a 6-year-old girl from California who decided to split her prize money with her classmates instead. This seminal event marks both the early peak of Chris's life and the first hint of his future decline into the man-child we know today. High-functioning autism. Autism is the lens through which Chris experiences the world. It is impossible to understand Chris's defensiveness, hypersensitivity, narcissism, irresponsibility, paranoia, victimhood, self-pity, and poor grasp on reality without understanding his relationship with autism. Chris was diagnosed with the disorder in his early childhood, and it became a cornerstone of his identity and influence on how he would act, alongside potential other undiagnosed psychological or neurological disorders. characters. Love Quest. The Love Quest or Sweetheart Search was the longest real-life saga of Chris. His goal was to obtain a boyfriend-free girl. The stated purpose of the Love Quest was to meet the woman who would be his true love, solve all of his problems, and bear his daughter Crystal. The Love Quest represented a focused effort to do everything in his power to achieve romantic fulfillment, except of course improving himself. For over a decade, from 2003 to 2018, the Love Quest was ongoing, with Chris unsurprisingly not having made any progress whatsoever in finding a romantic partner. In April 2012, he lost his virginity to a prostitute, and in early 2018, Chris was brainwashed by the Idea guys into ending his love quest, and he was told that he was happily married to several of his fictional OCs. Unfortunately, that was not the end of his story, as Chris went from believing in his marriages to eventually having sex of very questionable consent with a certain member of his family, which rightfully resulted in Chris serving time in prison. Ruckersville, Virginia. Ruckersville is located in Greene County, Virginia, and part of the Charlottesville metropolitan area. It also happens to be the home of Chris and the capital of all things Sonichu related, until August 2021, when Chris's arrest for incest saw him relocated to a jail in Orange, Virginia. Chris and his family moved from Ruckersville to Richmond suburbs after the dispute with the faculty of Nathaniel Greene Elementary School, only to return in 2000. Wikipedia. The Wikipedia, not to be confused with the Quickie, was a wiki set up for the sole use of Chris as a sort of personal wiki. It was designed to allow Chris to get the truth out, as he so desired to do on his own Wikipedia profile. Since its inception, Chris more or less treated the page as a free web hosting, a place to put his comics without having to pay for the resulting bandwidth use. The Wikipedia also served as the ultimate test of MediaWiki software and its usability, in that it strove to create a platform even an autistic man-child could use. While Chris does possess some technological intelligence, he still managed to fuck it up from time to time, even with a sysops holding his hand. PewDiePie video. This entry could either refer to the Chris Chan video made by PewDiePie on the 12th of November 2017, or it could be referring to the video titled PewDiePie Does Not Live Here, He Lives in Sweden, which is a video where Chris complains that PewDiePie does not live at 14 Branchland Court. Christorians. A Christorian is a person whom follows Chris's antics. There are two kinds, those who document and those who simply follow. Most importantly, they never interfere with Chris's life, they simply observe. Boyfriend-free girl. A boyfriend-free girl is a quickism that Chris uses to refer to a girl who is single. Virgin with rage. Virgin with rage was Chris's description of himself while he was still a virgin. Chris claimed that when he was a virgin, his condition generated frustration and, well, rage. Chris was very self-conscious about being a virgin and frequently brought up the subject unprompted, even in a casual conversation with people he had obviously just met. However, after being advised by his parents that it wasn't a good idea to mention that he was a virgin with rage, he stopped this practice, which was actually one of the few times he actually learned from his mistakes. Interviews. This entry could either refer to any of the hundreds of Chris interviews, but I personally think it refers to Chris's first ever interview, the previously mentioned Sonic the Hedgehog Watch and Win sweepstakes interview. Incest. I think we all know what this is referring to, so I'm going to shed some light on the bunch of other times Chris was spotted being okay with incest. In 2007, Chris uploaded several not safe for work drawings, including one of himself finger banging a nude brunette woman. An Encyclopedia Dramatica user immediately concluded this was Crystal, Chris's imaginary twin sister. Crystal also appeared as a girlfriend card he made for Yu-Gi-Oh! And when he first learned what incest meant, he said that he would only definitely discourage that, and that lesbian incest is possibly okay. Kursei Hameha. The Kursei Hameha, also referred to as Shinye Hameha, is the special finishing move of Doom used by Chris when battling his unfortunate adversaries, be they jerk-ups, mana-jerks, trolls, or Mary Lee Walsh. It is performed exactly the same way as the famed Kamehameha maneuver used in the anime series Dragon Ball and its sequels, by doing silly choreography poses and slowly yelling the name of a famous Hawaiian king. It is also possible that Chris was inspired by a scene in Excel Saga where the character at one point performed a Neve Hameha, a parody of the Kamehameha named after the series director Shinji Nabeshin Watanabe. If not directly inspired by Excel Saga, it is likely at least caused Chris to think of deriving his own version time of the famous attack. Dimensional Merge. The Dimensional Merge is a supposed apocalyptic event in which Chris believes that the Dimension 1280 and Dimension C197 will combine, bringing fictional characters into reality, and which Chris, being the designated god of the event, will ascend into godhood. Of course, the merge is just an escapist fantasy and coping mechanism for Chris. Originally part of the lore, the idea guys had brainwashed into Chris, the dimensional merge is Chris's latest means of avoiding reality, believing that it will rescue him from his self-inflicted real-life problems and enable him to continue living like a child. First announced in October 2018, the merge was expected to take place by the end of the year. The deadline and several others passed without the incident, but Chris has remained persistent. True and honest, Chris believes that in order to be honest, you must give away excessive amounts of personal information about yourself. Therefore, honest content refers to Chris's tendency to tell random strangers about very personal and private details about his life against his better judgment, usually to no benefit to himself and to the benefit of his trolls. While honesty may be the best policy, Chris has a poor grasp of what honesty is or when it's inappropriate to be honest. Worse still, he seems to think the only way to attract a woman is to be 100% honest. Like with many of Chris's strange mannerisms, this is likely linked to his autism. Autistic individuals often have little to no social filter, causing them to say things they shouldn't say. Chris just so happens to take this to ridiculous levels. BronyCon appearances. BronyCon was a yearly convention held by bronies each summer from 2011 to 2019. Chris has been a fan of the series years before the first BronyCon, yet he only began attending the conventions in 2017. As his interest in the children's cartoon deepened, he would continue to attend annually until My Little Pony Friendship is Magic ended its 9-year run in 2019. Even with his low regard among the MLP community, Chris has remained eager to congregate with his fellow fans. In total, Chris has attended 3 BronyCons, BronyCon 2017, 2018, and 2019, July 30th, 2021. On this very fateful day, a certain audio clip of Chris was released to the public, setting the internet ablaze for the next few days. The audio clip I'm referring to is the Bella audio clip, where Chris accidentally provides audio evidence to committing incest with her mother. PokeNews interview. This entry refers to the October 16th, 1999 news segment, where you can see a 17-year-old Chris Chan mumble about how to play Pokemon, the trading card game. House tour video. Most likely this refers to Chris's first ever house tour, which consists of 2 videos both uploaded on the 27th of March 2009, in which Chris provides a tour of his house and property. Such a video had been requested by both Julie and Ivy. Like his own room, Chris's entire house is filled with junk. Several rooms so cluttered Chris cannot enter them. Sometime after this, his parents found out, and one of Christory's most legendary moments ensues. Blanca Saga. Blanca Weiss, aka Amy B. Channel Kawaii Kitchen 123, was the identity assumed by various trolls who posed as Chris's sweetheart in order to get one thing, the Sonichu medallion. The group pulling the strings was a trio of YouTube trolls, 2 of them going by the handles Ricky Ricardo 123 and Nurse Iki Chan. They talked to Chris via instant messenger and telephone respectively. The third, Icarus69, received a package containing the medallion as well as an enclosed love letter, and uploaded a video of himself cutting it up, putting it up in a pickle jar before setting it on fire, pissing on it to extinguish the fire, and later completely destroy the medallion. Patty Chandler. Patty Chandler was Chris's childhood dog, a Beagle Spitz, who was put down in 2006. Chris brought Patty back to life in Sonichu 6 as Patty Chan, a character created by Megan Schroeder to help Chris cope with the loss of his beloved pet, where she somehow gained the ability to walk, talk, and apply for welfare in Quickville. Patty is allowed no rest, as her soul remains in Chris's fantasy world alongside an anthropomorphized version of Snoopy, where that animal died over a decade ago. According to a video from January 2010, Patty now feasts on human souls. While this may seem to be at odds with the canon of Sonichu comics, it makes perfect sense if you consider the distinct possibility that Quickville is hell. Clyde Cash. Clyde Cash was the ringleader of the Miscreants, and is often considered to be Chris's arch nemesis, even years after his trolling days were finished. In recent years, however, some have argued that people like the Idea Guys and Jacob Sockness have taken this position away from Clyde. Nonetheless, when people think of Chris Chan's greatest trolls, Clyde is usually chief among them, usually due to the sheer volume of videos that Chris made denouncing or threatening his rival. Clyde is in turn played up being a heel to Chris, presenting himself as a comically diabolical mastermind conspiring to inconvenience Chris wherever possible. Blue Spike Julie. Blue Spike, also known as Leon Spike, a 13-year-old brat with Asperger's syndrome according to Chris, was a young troll who contacted Chris through two fake identities, a sweetheart named Julie and her evil brother named Max. Playing as Julie, Blue Spike had phone sex with Chris for hours each night, listening to Chris' mass debate. As Blue Spike was in complete control of Chris, he could have done more sinister things, but night after night he engaged in nothing but noisy, fabricated phone sex, and listening to Chris jerk off very loudly. Blue Spike's trolling caused Chris to admit to Julie that he had tried using a dildo convinced Chris to take a long drive to Ohio in what he saw as an effort to rescue his girlfriend, produced the infamous made him describe a future scene from Sonic 9 alluding to his gay fans, and was a cause for the legendary incident where his father walks in on him with his pants down. He was also responsible for other sick activities, including coercing Chris into shoving shards of his Sonic medallion up his ass while he watched and mocked him. After that, and subsequently being kicked out of the Miscreants for his utterly rotten behavior, he was involved in relatively minor trolling incidents before fading into obscurity. Ian Brandon Anderson. Ian Brandon Anderson was a name given to Chris in the late 2009 as a part of an in-joke during the Liquid Chris saga. When Liquid first showed up, his gimmick was that he was supposedly the real Christian Weston Chandler, and that C-Chan Sonichu account on YouTube had been hacked by an imposter a short while ago, and it was the imposter who was now operating the IBA Chandler account and pretending to be the real Chris. In this narrative, Ian Brandon Anderson was supposedly the real name of the imposter. First, Let's Player. This refers to the gameplay footage Chris uploaded on the 22nd of November 2003, where Chris gives a tour of his Animal Crossing village. This has caused many to proclaim Chris as the first Let's Player, but this statement is highly debated due to the fact that what counts as a Let's Play style video is pretty broad, and there are videos which predate Chris's which are also centered around someone playing video games while commentating it. Miyamoto Saga. In January 2009, Clyde Cash impersonated Shigeru Miyamoto and was in talks with Chris to produce a Sonichu video game. In most of the emails, the information provided was never asked for by Miyamoto, and one can only wonder how the real Miyamoto would feel with a young man rambling about how he's a virgin with rage or about trolls who slander him online. Liquid Chris, Solid Chris. Liquid Chris, real name Christopher Duckworth, born July 1990, claimed to be the true and honest Christian Weston Chandler and the one and only creator of the Electric Hedgehog Pokemon Sonichu. In reality, he was simply an impersonator on YouTube who initially just made videos to amuse himself and his friends. Liquid was played by identical twin brothers Chris and John Duckworth. Chris portrayed Liquid on YouTube and in the PVCC forums, while John portrayed him during the SingStar challenge. Eventually, Solid discovered Liquid, and he actually believed that he was an imposter trying to take credit for his glorious creation rather than just being an impersonator. Once he was in Solid's sight, Liquid decided to up his game by playing along with his rivalry with Chris Chan, as so did his fans, and became a full-time on-duty troll. Chris Chan Sonichu. Chris Chan Sonichu is Chris's full-on Mary Sue persona in the Sonichu comics. In October 2009, Chris actually transformed into Chris Chan Sonichu. The character became a transsexual in 2015, mirroring Chris's own trans woman identity. In 2018, after being influenced by the Idea Guys and as a coping mechanism, Chris developed a messiah complex involving Chris Chan Sonichu and another imaginary alter ego, CPU Blueheart. Barb is a hoarder. This entry refers to the fact that the 14 Brantling Court hoard started due to Barbara not throwing away objects she considered valuable, and from there on it got worse and worse to the point that it referred to as the Hoard, and occupies the entire house and fills up a few rooms to the point that they are completely unusable. Animal neglect. This is most likely referring to the fact that many Christorians consider that Chris, with his stupidity, indirectly harm and neglect his pets. For example, due to the house fire which was caused by a coffee machine extension cord located in the bathroom, one of Chris's cats died in the fire, which is a situation situation itself could have been avoided if Chris and Barb weren't hoarders. Attraction sign. The attraction sign was used by Chris during his love quest to get the attention of a boyfriend-free girl. Incredibly, the sight of a fat, sweaty, smelly man-child soliciting sex with a piece of cardboard has not enticed any ladies to date. An earlier version ran "I am X years old male seeking an 18 to X year old single woman," but more information about Chris and demands about his partner soon found their way onto the sign. All of the original signs have likely been destroyed in the house fire of 2014. Gal pals. A gal pal is a quickism for female friend. Chris believes he had a lot of these while growing up, but in reality they were little more than acquaintances who let their autistic kid sit at their lunch table. The unbalanced approach to socialization perhaps contributed to his warped views on gender and him adopting rather effeminate traits and mannerisms, unaware that what might be acceptable for girls might be considered outwardly taboo for guys. Some have suggested that he clung onto female acquaintances as a kind of fill-in mother role to protect him from bullies, which matches up to his desire to be babied by a wife while he plays video games as a stay-at-home dad, because it's easier to count on others to look after him than to take up that responsibility. Long after high school ended, he developed feelings of nostalgia over it and the gal pal acquaintances, to the point where he recreated a high school and several gal pals out of Lego. Casey. Casey Julia Chandler was a troll who became embroiled in the conflict between her lover, Liquid Chris, who she later married, and Christian Weston Chandler. Chris described her as having a fun, caring, kind personality, since Chris believes all women consist of nothing but these attributes. Chris tried to lure Casey to his house under the false pretense that he was actually Liquid Chris, which consisted of numerous extremely poor impersonations of Liquid, which Casey had to pretend to be fooled by. They had a long series of phone conversations before she cut ties with him due to her father's disapproval. House fire. The 2014 house fire occurred on the 10th of January 2014. In the early morning hours, a frayed extension cord in the bathroom of 14 Brancelon Court sparked and set the house on fire. Chris first mentioned the fire on Facebook, and it was confirmed later that day when Charlottesville local CBS affiliate WCAV-TV broadcast a brief news report on the incident. The fire-damaged house was renovated while the Chandlers stayed at the rental house, and they were moved back in by January 2015. Ivy. Ivy O'Neill was a troll who became Chris's one and only sweetheart from March to May 2009. The slew of work that escalated from her simple requests to gain a video shoutout remains one of the craziest sagas in the CWC chronology. Ivy's saga is also seen as one of the most important to Christorians, as it provides an insight into Chris's thought process, the saga behind the scenario where Chris genuinely believed that his love quest was ending. Business cards. Chris primarily uses business cards for socialization, handing them out to potential gal pals and fans, or for promoting the brand of Sonichu. Chris used the cards prior to being discovered by the internet in 2007. A variant from the early 2000s contained only a link to CWC Sonichu site. These were given to fellow patrons of the gameplays, his 2004 psychiatrist, and copies were left at the University of Virginia's library. Anna McLaren received the card from Chris where he first met her. She noted it contained his name, email address, and a website link. Chris had given it to her in the hopes she would email him using the contact info on it. One variant of the card was also used for the love quest, featuring his Match.com account and asking for a female companion. By early 2010s, the card contained detailed info on Chris. His name, address, email address, phone number, his Facebook, Twitter, PlayStation, and Miiverse accounts were listed, along with an image of Chris's Mii character and a QR code for it. In June 2012, after Chris ranted about troll harassment, Anna suggested Chris leave the internet and change his phone number. Chris shut down the advice, complaining that he could not change his phone number as they were printed on his business cards. Julie. An infamous video on the 20th of February 2009, Chris created a sex video for Julie with the help of his inflatable assistant Kimmy, in order to give Julie an idea of what their first time together would be like. Chris' tender and passionate cries of Julie provided one of the most striking and memorable quickisms. The quickism was also used by trolls to mock Chris for falling in love with Blue Spike's fake persona, Julie. The Gameplays. The Gameplays was a comic book, video game, card, toy, and hobby shop in Charlottesville, Virginia that originally opened in 1995. From at least 2002 up until the summer of 2008, Chris hung out there on a regular basis, going there every Friday without fail to play the Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! The trading card games. The shop hosted the Pokemon The Trading Card Game League, where Chris served as a self-proclaimed volunteer volunteer gym leader, though he was not endorsed in any way and was largely simply tolerated by the staff. After a long period of increasingly disruptive behavior and repeated warnings from staff, Chris was permanently kicked out of the store by one of the managers, Michael Snyder, on the 6th of June 2008. After his permanent ban, Chris attempted several times to regain access to the store, to no avail thanks to Michael Snyder's insistence. On the 28th of October, Chris and Barb got arrested and ended up facing multiple charges: hit and run, misdemeanor assault, trespassing, and attacking a law officer. Going by the details of said charges as well as the photographs uploaded to the Quickie by Chris himself, it can be assumed that the two tried to enter the store. Chris got in a fight with Michael, the two tried and failed to escape before the police arrived, damaging something in the process, and when the cops showed up, Barb tried to stop them from arresting Chris. Following the judgment after the 28th of October 2011, Chris was forced to keep away from Michael Snyder at all times, which by extension meant that he was permanently banned from the store by law up until its closure, which was reported on June 2014. Megan Schroeder. Megan Schroeder is a former gal pal of Christine Weston Chandler, with whom he had perhaps the closest relationship with anybody he's ever had in his life, and previously one of the 4 potential sweethearts that Chris met that wasn't a troll, a fictitious character, or his own mother. Chris first met Megan in the summer of 2004 at the game place, where she and her brother were regulars. Megan and Chris became good friends, but Chris, being Chris, completely misread their bond as one that could blossom into true and honest romance. Megan repeatedly tried to set boundaries that Chris either misunderstood or completely ignored, which led to an increased tension between the two. This reached a boiling point during the early days of Christine's feud with Encyclopedia Dramatica, in which Chris drew a not safe for work image of himself and Megan. Following Chris's progressively creepy and wanted advances, and realizing that he drew not safe for work images of her, Megan cut off contact with him in 2008. Man in the pickle suit. The man in the pickle suit was a common scapegoat of Chris, whom he used to blame whenever he was tricked or conned. In 2009, the role of the man in the pickle suit was adopted by Marvin, who's often referred to as the Jew in the pickle suit. The character was first created on the 11th of September 2008 by a troll posing as Blanca. Using a fake MySpace page, they claimed that Blanca was in fact a black transvestite in a pickle costume. This led to Chris believing that the picture of the man in the pickle suit was in fact a real person. Because the person was entirely fictional, their character quickly became anonymized by the trolls, with multiple people operating under the name at once. Zapped to the extreme. Zapped to the extreme is a knockoff catchphrase Chris uses in the cover of Sonic 2 #1, copying Sonic's catchphrase "gotta go fast," but just worse in every aspect. Jerk-ops. A jerk-op is a mall security guard, police officer, or prison guard. The word itself is a portmanteau of jerk and cop. Female jerk-ops are sometimes called Jane-cops. Jerk-ops typically resemble human beings wearing red, white, or brown police-style uniforms. In the Sonic 2 comics, jerk-ops serve as the villainous private army of Mary Lee Walsh and Count Graduan. Mugshots. Chris has had a total of 4 mugshots taken of herself. The first one is in 2014 after being arrested for the Michael Snyder incident, and 2 more in the Central Virginia Regional Jail in August 2021, May 2022, and March 2023. Michael Snyder. Michael Snyder is one of Chris's many enemies. He was the manager of the Game Place, a game and hobby store that was in Charlottesville. Chris regularly caused trouble at the Game Place and was eventually perma-banned in June 2008. Don't call anybody. This is the infamous phrase Chris said during the Blue Arm saga before macing a GameStop employee with pepper spray. Heterochromia. Heterochromia is a medical condition in which someone's irises are differently colored. Chris has complete heterochromia, which means one of his eyes is a different color than the other. Chris claims although his eyes were originally blue in high school, he contracted pink eye in his right eye and the prescribed eye drops turned it green. Captain's Log intros. Captain's Log was for a while Chris's usual opening to a video blog. First appearing in his 24th of September 2008 video, it comes from a popular sci-fi franchise, Star Trek. In it, the captain, commander, or other senior crew members would make an entry log to what has happened in the situation prior to the beginning of the episode. Parappa the Rapper contest. In June 2007, Sony Computer Entertainment America announced the Chop Chop Master Onion Rap Showdown contest to promote the video game Parappa the Rapper. Contestants were asked to film themselves performing either Chop Chop Master Onion's rap, Instructor Mussolini's rap, or Cheep Cheep the Cooking Chicken's rap a cappella. The grand prize winner of the contest would receive 2 PSPs and an all-expense-paid trip to Seattle for the 2007 Penny Arcade Exposition. The contest was of monumental importance as it would achieve gold for Christian Weston Chandler on multiple fronts. Beyond his innate desire to win contests by making an ass of himself on film, Chris hoped to bestow one of the PSPs to his beloved Megan Schroeder and invite her to accompany him on the trip, thereby creating an opportunity for her to give in to her obvious passion for him. The potential benefits could not be overstated. But unfortunately for him, he got cock-blocked by Adam Stackhouse and proceeded to bitch about it like a sole loser. Jack Thaddeus. Jack Thaddeus is a troll responsible for various PlayStation Network related trollings with Chris. He helped bring out the beginning of the Liquid Chris saga. During the Calling Out saga, Chris was manipulated into outing him as an internet lolcow, a noted cosplayer, Jew, communist and Aspergian, sparking a brief exchange of words between the two, before Bob's death forced the end of the saga. Sonichu comics based off real life. As previously mentioned, the Sonichu comics are indeed confirmed to be heavily based off Chris's real life experiences and people he knows in real life. Something Awful thread. Something Awful is an American comedy website hosting content including blog entries, forums, articles, digitally edited pictures, and humorous media reviews. It is also one of the first websites on the internet to contain a thread related to the discovery of Chris Chan, which at the time was nothing more than a myth. The original thread is most likely lost to time. Little Big Planet levels. Chris has created many levels in the game Little Big Planet and posted playthrough videos of them. These videos are truly breathtaking. You rarely see an allegedly enthusiastic video game fan play so clumsily on such awfully designed levels, especially considering they're made by him. With all the trophies in the game already bagged, years of playing and thousands of hours spent on video games, one would think that Chris would be able to both play the video game at some tolerable skill level and also have some gut feeling about what goes into the design of an enjoyable game level. But no, his level shows that the entirety of his video game achievements was obtained by merciless, uninterrupted grinding. The levels he created are Sonichu Episode 1, Aqua Teen Hunger Force Burger Time, LBC 1 Quick PlayStation 3 History, LBP Collector's Case, A Fun First Date, Metal Speed Solid, Rescuing Casey, The Guardian of the Owl Kingdom, LPV2 Collector's Case Tutorial, and Autism Tutorial. Twitter account. Chris has had a total of 6 Twitter accounts. His 2 main ones, which he uses to vent his opinions, Quick Sonichu and CPU Sonichu, and his 4 alt accounts, which he would use to white knight himself. Nightstar2891, Twisparlicious, Magichan111448, and Cream Arena. The Red Straw. The oversizing drinking straw fail was introduced in sub-episode 7 of Sonichu 4, where Chris sucked on a beverage while evading jerk-ups. Numerous trolls and Encyclopedia Dramatica users pointed out that the clumsy artwork made it look like Chris was filleting a big fat phallus, playing on his deeply rooted fear of becoming a homo. In the time since its creation, the drinking straw has become one of the most recognizable panels from Sonichu due to its absurdity, depicted subject matter, and overall poor quality signature of Chris's illustrations. Many artists have parodied the enormous straw, often somehow drawing it even bigger than Chris's version for the comedic effect. Arrest footage. As we all know, Chris was arrested on the 1st of August 2021 for incest, and the arrest was captured live on camera by Weens. Jason Howell. Jason Kendrick Howell is the original creator of the Chris Chan Encyclopedia Dramatica page. Chris wanted to call the jerk-ups on Howell for allegedly having sex with an underage girl, Kathleen. Howell goes by Liquid Snake on 4chan/vboard. According to Chris, he's also the dork of ages, a phrase stolen from American Dad. She Came for Quick. She Came for Quick is a Rule 34 picture that Chris drew as part of a campaign to fight Encyclopedia Dramatica by replacing negativity with positivity. It portrays Chris using his hand to stimulate the naked Megan Schroeder's China to the point where she feels good, while Chris gives a thumbs up. Arguably the most scandalous of all of Chris's autistic art creations, this single image managed to invoke much drama. It was the straw that permanently destroyed the already dying friendship between Chris and Megan, and the consequences of uploading it online have continued to face him for years afterwards. Patreon. Chris joined Patreon on the 30th of November 2016. win. He made multiple mistakes on setting up the account. He set it with a request of $250,000 per month instead of a total goal. He chose to limit big ticket donations to once per month. He offered redundant gifts for any donors above the $50 mark, and he used someone else's fan art of Sonichu and Roastew for his account profile. Lolcow. A lolcow is a person laughed at for actions that they take, despite not trying to be funny. They may try to take themselves seriously, but are often milked for laughs, with or without their knowledge. Chris is often regarded as a holy grail of lolcows, with no one coming near his divine levels of lolcowery. Weens. Weening, or fail trolling, is the act of attempting to troll someone, but ultimately failing at it the whole way through, and not receiving any significant results, typically due to inexperience with lolcow culture. The people that do this are often referred to as weens, a corruption of the phrase epic win. Weens are wannabe trolls who attempt to recreate the antics of previous trolls, without being aware that there was much manipulation behind the scenes to goad Chris into performing for the trolls, and therefore just embarrassing themselves. ED articles. When Chris first heard of the Encyclopedia Dramatica articles mocking and making fun of him, Chris began campaigning for the removal of the article for smearing his name, and particularly took offense to various pieces of fan art depicting Roastew with a pickle. Naturally, this just led to the trolls adding more content to the page as he shared a series of written and recorded rants about the article. The Miscreants. The Miscreants were a group of people who trolled Chris from 2009 up until his father's death in 2011. Clyde Cash was the original leader of the Miscreants, which was titled after the Patriots, the shadowy cabal for Metal Gear Solid series, who were revealed to be behind a conspiracy spanning decades, including all of the main incidents the protagonist goes through. They claim to be responsible for several unfortunate events in Chris's past, which Chris seemingly believes. Panda Halo. Sarah Cassandra Cash was Chris's true and honest sweetheart in 2008 till 2009, who lived in Southern Australia before her fiery death, but during the Stone Age. This is a fragment of Sonichu's dialogue which plays as a broken joke, due to the fact that there's no punchline and simply confuses the reader, which left many to speculate its true meaning. Many years later, Chris revealed that the meaning behind said broken joke was that you don't have to tell me twice, but during the Stone Age you would have to tell me twice because I'd be a caveman and cavemen are stupid. First brony. They said that Chris was the first brony due to the fact that in 2011 Chris was already posting about MLP and featuring characters from said show in his works and other related activities. Manajerks. Manajerks, different to jerk ops, is a portmanteau of manager and jerk, who are villains featured in the Sonichu comics, most prominently in the sub-episodes, who regularly antagonize Chris's comic book counterpart. They are based on a multitude of real-life store managers who all threw Chris out of their place of business for being a creepy stalker during his love quest. In the comic, the Manajerks are all superpowered agents of the private will of corrupted citizens whom Chris and his team regularly need to neutralize. After his adventure on the 26th of December 2014, Chris began using the term ass manager to refer to his victim, the GameStop assistant manager who he had pepper sprayed and who ultimately took him to court, Catherine. Catherine Sorrentino was, according to Chris in mid-2014, his latest sweetheart. Little is known about her personally, only that she wasn't real, trolls lonely, crazy men. She had an English accent and heritage, and as such used British spelling, which seems to have permanently impacted Chris's spelling. She was almost certainly white and younger than Chris, as his preference precluded anything else. Although everyone knew her as Katie, Chris insisted on calling her Catherine. The two met on OkCupid in July 2014, when Christian discovered that she was a 97% match. He pursued her. He kept her identity a secret until after the first date in late August. After several adventures, Catherine informed Chris in December that she was not interested in a relationship with him, sending him into another downward spiral of virgin rage, loneliness, and depression. Racism and homophobia. The race of people is often considered a sensitive topic, a poor match for Chris. With his lack of social awareness and tendency to take pop culture stereotypes literally, while Chris doesn't seem to hold deeply bigoted views or have irrational hatred towards people that aren't white, he has been remarkably tone-deaf when talking about it or portraying minorities in his comics and videos. Homos was a derogatory term by which Chris referred to gay people. He had occasionally used phrases such as those of the wrong orientation, because even saying the word homo or gay made him uncomfortable. Chris's former hatred for male homosexuals was confusing, since they, of all people, posed the least threat to his love quest, and seemed to be motivated entirely by his own sexual insecurity. Adam Stackhouse. Adam Stackhouse was the winner of the Chop Chop Master Onion Rap Showdown from the Parappa the Rapper contest. Chris felt that he would have won instead, and thus harbored a grudge against him. In order to win, Chris orchestrated the mass spamming of votes via dummy sock puppet accounts, so that he would not only win a PSP for his then lover interest Megan Schroeder, but also claim the prize of an all-expense-paid trip for the two to the 2007 Penny Arcade Exposition. He had hoped to bring Megan on the trip and eventually make love to her in their shared hotel room, losing his Virgin with Rage title once and for all. As a result, Adam had inadvertently cockblocked Chris by simply being more talented. Fanta recycling. On April 16th, Chris revealed one of his darkest secrets on a video for Ivy. In their conversation about love and life, Chris told Ivy that he recycled his male juice to protect his fertility. He also claimed that his male juice would taste exactly like what he had eaten recently. To test this hypothesis, Ivy requested a video. Naturally, Chris screws it up drinking the Fanta only after the fact. Christian's Favorite Hits. Christian's Favorite Hits is a homemade CD which sparked the creation and debut of everybody's favorite Sonic recolor, Sonichu. Tasked with creating a jewel case insert for graphic design class at high school, Chris found himself once again fighting for artistic freedom of expression. The draconian rules of the assignment that he avoid using copyrighted images required Chris to get creative. Chris claims to have gotten an A+ on the assignment. The other characters on the cover are Christine's original Pokemon, Hispanolik, Cafingro, Plotistic, Bugzap, and Strong Tire. Note that many of the other drawings on the cover are also uncreative combinations of Pokemon and other objects, such as the halo floating above Chris's head. As for the CD's actual contents, the tracklist is unsurprisingly a very liberal interpretation of what constitutes as a hit, being mostly comprised of songs from video games and movie soundtracks. Cole Smithy. Joseph Cole Smithy is Chris's half-brother, Barbara's first son, and lone escapee of the Casa de Chandler prior to Chris's arrest. Despite sharing chromosomes with Chris and being raised by the same horrible mother, Cole lives relatively normal life. Cole's emails to Chris reveal a lot of information about the Chandler family. Rollin' and Trollin'. Rollin' and Trollin' is a video of downtown Charlottesville uploaded on the 17th of July 2009, in which Chris attempts surreal humor. Notably is a video message to real-life trolls, including several quickie editors. The key component of the message is that in a shocking turn of events, Chris was engaging in the most elaborate trolling scheme in history, and has duped us all masterfully. To sell the deception, Chris changed his look to have a normal hairstyle, a goatee, sunglasses instead of large pedo glasses, plain blue t-shirt and jeans, navy blue sleeves, unbuttoned shirt over his t-shirt, dog collar bracelet, his forearm appears to be covered in thick tattoos, and a chain with some dog tags instead of his trademark Sonichu medallion. Of course, the disguise unintentionally gave away the truth. The lack of the ring and the medallion suggested that Chris was not entirely true and honest when he made this video, something that he indeed confirmed later. In some parts of the video, his voice suddenly sounds like that of a man in his 20s. However, in other parts of the video, his voice starts crackling as it normally does, like a young boy's voice. No matter what, he still sounds like, well, an autist. Interestingly enough, Chris behaves as a normal person would. This implies that he knows to some degree that what he is doing isn't normal. To what degree he realizes this is unknown. Jay-Z. In 2009, a troll used Jay-Z's pseudonym as a nickname for a lawyer persona named James Zilbestein, which was used to persuade Chris to change the name of the real-life people used in Sonichu, most notably with Mary Lee Walsh becoming Slow Wheel Ryam. Despite this, some future real-life characters such as Jason Kendrick Howell still use their real names. Sonchu. Sonchu was the name Chris gave to his car. Chris has driven several cars over the years, all bearing vanity plate reading Sonchu. Sonchu's first incarnation was a 1994 Ford Escort station wagon that Chris drove until 2013, when he replaced it with a white Cadillac Seville until it died from a cracked engine block. From September 2014 to November 2018, Chris drove a 2010 Ford Focus sedan until its engine died. The Chandlers subsequently shared one vehicle, Barb's Dodge Grand Caravan. Although Chris Chris transferred the Sonchu plate onto it, thus making the fourth and final incarnation of Sonchu, until his arrest for incest and the thief stealing the unattended vehicle's plate, at which point the plates have been replaced and the van is now Barb's alone. The van was totaled in November 2021 following a T-bone collision which left Barb injured with broken ribs and a concussion. Watchmen. The Watchmen were a group of fanatical enablers whose members served as gatekeepers and white knights for Chris. The goal was to keep away malicious individuals trying to troll or scam Chris. In practice, however, the group was highly aggressive towards outsiders coming into contact with Chris, whether they demonstrated malice or not. Watchmen members tracked and collected information on anyone involved with or attempting to get involved with Chris, and had little hesitation in regards to doxing any potential weens and trolls. Hostilities were occasionally shown in the form of feuds with rumors and disinformation spread by members Maker Knight V, Naught, the WCT, and 13, under perceived enemies, or raids by various Watchmen members. Infighting ran rampant, with the groups splintering into few iterations over internal conflicts. With Chris currently jailed for incest, their purpose has become moot. So Need a Cute Girl My Age. So Need a Cute Girl My Age is the first track of Christian and the Hedgehog Boys' debut album. It is sung over a live version of I Want It That Way by the Backstreet Boys on their 2000 intro into the Millennium Tour. Chris has described it in an Encyclopedia Dramatica edit as his Sweetheart Search theme song. It is arguably his greatest hit, and certainly the Hedgehog Boys song Chris goes back to the most often. As well as a performance listed below, impromptu features appear in a number of his videos. Christian and the Hedgehog Boys. Christian and the Hedgehog Boys was a virtual band formed and fronted by Chris. In his head, helping him compose the music was Sonichu and the rest of the gang. In reality, there wasn't a band. The album consisted entirely of Chris poorly recording himself shouting awful parody lyrics about his shitty life over copyrighted pop music, which according to him qualifies as a new and unique composition. Donald Duck impression. Chris likes to believe that he is good at impersonating Donald Duck. His impersonation has been judged as mediocre by most and downright creepy by others. This is mostly due to the fact that Chris does not use appropriate comedic timing to introduce his voice acting. Although unlikely, some trolls maintain that when he worked at Wendy's, he was actually fired for doing this impersonation. Orbiter wave. An orbiter wave refers to a period in Christory where there is a sudden surge in new followers and orbiters, typically as a result of something particularly shocking or notable he did. Soon after chunks of the incest call were leaked on the 30th of July 2021, the affairs became the fourth most trending hashtag on Twitter. As a result of this, the following mainstream media coverage, thousands of people were exposed to Chris for the first time. Out of this new infamy, an orbiter wave arose. It is dubbed as such due to the sheer volume of new people following Chris's life story. These people can be roughly broken down into two groups. Those who were curious to see what went wrong in his life, leading up to the alleged fricking of his own mother, and those who saw him as nothing more than another deranged sex pest, blissfully unaware of Christory. Shrek Retold. Shrek Retold is a crowd-funded shot-for-shot remake of the 2001 film Shrek, released on the 29th of November 2018. It was organized by 3GI Productions for their annual Shrek Fest convention. 200 people contributed their own version of scenes from the movie. Chris was assigned scene number 23 out of 200, in which Shrek is convinced by Lord Farquaad to go on a quest to rescue Princess Fiona so he can have his swamp back. Chris's scene features voice acting in crudely colored stills that were surprisingly animated, though very likely by someone else, probably doing most of the work he's done in around a year and a half. His scene is still only a little over a minute long. The audio on his scene also continually skips numerous times, as if it were filmed on his abused PlayStation Eye. Shrek Retold was a rare instance where Chris asked to be part of something, Chris did it and completed the task on time, and no drama was started as a result of harassment by Weens or Chris himself. As of July 2022, Shrek Retold has amassed almost 9 million views, making it the most viewed video in Christory by default. Fashion Square Mall. Charlottesville Fashion Square is one of the original venues of Chris's Love Quest exploits. Like all of his attraction locations, it hasn't done much for him, as his behavior has led to several run-ins with its management and security personnel, ultimately resulting in a ban from the mall. Owing to the mall's popularity with Chris as social and attraction locations, it has since become a place of hallowed ground among trolls, weens, and Christorians alike. Medallion Destruction Video. This entry refers to the video filmed during the Blanca saga, where one of the trolls using the persona of Blanca, Icarus69, finally obtains a medallion sent by a gullible Chris who thought he was sending it to a sweetheart, when in reality he was sending that medallion to its doom. The video itself is fairly well made for it being recorded and edited in 2008. The first few instances of the video show a title card saying how to destroy a medallion, while Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, Molto Vivace, ominously plays in the background. Following the title card, we can see the troll with some latex gloves cut up the medallion and place it inside an already packed pickle jar. After that, he starts playing around with the medallion and pickles, which is preceded by him slamming a hammer on the medallion and fragmenting it into shards, which finally gets concluded by the medallion getting set on fire and pissed on to extinguish the flames. Indeed, a pretty horrifying fate for poor little Sonichu medallion. Michael Snyder hit and run. On the 20th of October 2011, a date which will live in infamy, the game place was suddenly and deliberately attacked by forces of the city of Quickville. On that fateful Friday evening at around 5:20 PM, Chris and Barbara visited the game place where Chris had been banned since 2008. Chris had then recently heard that the shop was under new management thanks to sexual abuse charges being placed upon the previous owner, and he had hoped that his ban from the store could be lifted with a new appeal. To Chris's horror, he realized that Michael Snyder was now the man in charge, meaning that Chris was effectively trespassing after Snyder told him in no certain terms that he was not to return. What happened next is still not completely clear, but Chris took a photo of the store and was escorted out, snapping an additional 2 photos of Michael Snyder in the parking lot. All hell broke loose when Chris and Barbara allegedly hit Michael once with their car on their way out. When the jerk cops arrived, Barbara assaulted one during the arrest in an effort to protect Chris. Both were subdued and arrested. Chris and Barbara were each charged with felonies, and Chris was also charged with the additional misdemeanors, which meant that they both were facing possible prison time. They were bonded out on the 29th of October, with Chris's initial hearing taking place 1 week after Barb's. The Chandlers were represented in court by Rob Bell, a Republican member of the Virginia House of Delegates. On the 10th of July 2012, a plea bargain was reached. All of their charges were reduced to misdemeanors. Barbara was sentenced to community service and 2 years of probation. Chris was sentenced to community service and 1 year of probation and also mandatory psychiatric treatment and evaluation. They also had to pay for Michael Snyder's medical expenses, and by the time all was said and done, most of Bob's inheritance was wasted on paying for defense to justify Chris's personal vendetta against someone who tried holding him accountable for his actions. This, along with the subsequent fines, would later bite his surviving family in the ass with the start of the financial crisis a few years later. Hexbox. Hexbox is a quickism for Microsoft's Xbox series of game consoles, probably in reference to hex being a word for curse. There are currently 4 generations of Xbox game consoles, 3 of which Chris has owned games for at one point. Chris has stated that if his video game Christian Western Chandler's Adult Chronicles ever gets made, he wants it to become a multi-console title on everywhere but the Hexbox. With his later acquisition of an Xbox One, however, it remains to be seen whether he relaxes his position on Adult Chronicles being released on it. By 2019, Chris lost interest in playing the Xbox and PlayStation 4 consoles he owns. Kick the Autistic Kid. Kick the Autistic Kid is a phrase first coined by Chris when he complained about not receiving preferential treatment for having autism, shortly after he lost the Chop Chop Macedonian Rap Showdown. Soon the phrase developed into a game that consists of doing anything Chris doesn't like. He alleges it is America's favorite, owing to the frequency of his antagonists playing it. There are many known variations of the game, and the most noteworthy ones would be Chris Style. Set yourself up as one of the most visible and recognized representations of autism within internet culture, act like an entitled child, and develop horrifying perversions which you freely discuss on YouTube, give other autistic people as well as those with Asperger's syndrome a bad reputation by association, and there's a 100% chance this will result in them trolling you. Blanca style. Pretend to be a boyfriend-free girl, take the time to befriend Chris until he trusts you. Once that happens, get him to send you horrific nudes and something of value to him, and record yourself destroying it. And my personal favorite, Pickleman style. go to Virginia and somehow meet up with Chris while wearing a pickle costume. He will be bewildered by it and be too powerless to act. Alec Benson Leary. Alec Benson Leary is the sole and only creator of Asperchu, which is a multiple award-winning comic series. His skillful artwork, gripping stories and excellent characterization has resulted in the series gaining hundreds of fans in the few short months since its inception. Many of these fans were discontented followers of the Sonichu comics, who were turned off by the comics becoming exponentially more disturbing. While Alex has stated that Asperchu is not a parody of Chris, there are many similarities between the two. Both of them are overweight, striped shirt-wearing naive individuals who find themselves somewhat out of place in the world. They both address the masses through YouTube videos and both are preoccupied with finding a boyfriend-free girl to make into a sweetheart. These similarities between the two characters have resulted in no shortage of rage from Chris. He seems to feel that the only reason Asperchu exists is to poke fun at him. He also takes serious offense at the idea of a Sonichu who suffers from Asperger's syndrome for some odd reason. And I'll end the video here, because it is already comically long and I've only been leaving the house twice a day for the past week and a half. So if you made it this far, make sure to subscribe if you enjoyed it. And if the video hits 1,000 likes, I'll start writing the script for the next part of this series. And with that said, I'm going to get some long-awaited sleep. Good night.